There were hundreds of people in that room. Speakers, tributes, music, a ministry community gathering to say goodbye to one of its most prominent figures. And then Franklin Graham stepped up and said something that cut through all of it. He said, "All of you who want to say this, that, and the other, only God knows the whole story." One sentence. And everyone in that room, everyone watching the broadcast, knew exactly what he was talking about, because the shadow in that room had a name, and that name was not on the speaker list. Joni Lamb's memorial service was held on May 18th, 2026, at Gateway Church's Southlake campus in Texas. By any measure, it was a significant event. Daystar Television Network, the ministry she co-founded with her late husband Marcus Lamb in 1993, broadcasted globally. Thousands attended or watched. The speakers focused on what you would expect at a memorial of this kind: faith, perseverance, legacy. The decades of work that built Daystar into one of the world's largest Christian television networks, reaching more than 2 billion homes. Tributes honored Joni's entrepreneurial leadership, her commitment to ministry, her resilience. The service was, by all accounts, a genuine celebration of a life that had genuinely accomplished remarkable things. And running underneath all of it, unspoken from the podium, undeniable in the room, was the question of the son who wasn't there. Jonathan Lamb was not among the featured speakers at his mother's memorial service. That absence was noticed immediately by people who had followed the family conflict, by longtime Daystar viewers, by the Christian media community that had watched this story unfold over the past year. It was not a surprise, exactly. The estrangement between Jonathan and his mother had been public knowledge for months. His departure from Daystar, where he had served as vice president in 2024, had intensified the public dimension of a conflict that had been building for longer. But there is a difference between knowing a family is divided and watching that division made visible at a funeral. Jonathan Lamb did not speak at his mother's memorial. His name was not on the program. The service proceeded tribute after tribute, speaker after speaker, while the most public and painful chapter of Joni Lamb's final years remained, by unspoken agreement, off the podium, until Franklin Graham spoke. Viewers encountering this story for the first time through the memorial coverage. The background matters. Jonathan Lamb and his wife Susie made serious public allegations in the period surrounding his departure from Daystar. They claimed that their young daughter had been sexually abused by a male relative connected to the family, and they alleged that disagreements over how those allegations were handled internally created the rupture that ultimately broke the family apart. These are allegations. They have not been adjudicated in any legal proceeding. Joni Lamb strongly and publicly rejected the framing. She denied wrongdoing. She disputed the characterization of her response to the situation, and she alleged that Jonathan had initiated what she described as a deliberate effort to damage her reputation and undermine the ministry. Two competing accounts, both stated publicly. Neither resolved, and at the center of all of it, a child, a family, and a ministry that had built its entire public identity around faith, family, and Christian values. The conflict became deeply public. Jonathan and Susie spoke openly. Journalist Julie Roys of the Roys Report covered the allegations in detail. The Christian media community divided over who to believe and what to make of it. And then Joni Lamb got sick, and the family did not reconcile. She died on May 7th, and Susie posted on social media with trembling hands that they were down the road and nobody called. Memorial service on May 18 was the first major public moment after all of that, and everyone in that room knew the full weight of what was not being said from the podium. Franklin Graham is not a peripheral figure in American Christianity. He is a son of Billy Graham. He leads Samaritan's Purse. He is one of the most recognizable names in evangelical Christianity globally. He speaks at a memorial service. People listen, and what he says carries weight beyond the moment. At Joni Lamb's memorial, Graham addressed what he called the broader atmosphere of criticism and speculation surrounding the family. He said, "All of you who want to say this, that, and the other, only God knows the whole story." That sentence is doing several things simultaneously. It is an acknowledgement. He did not pretend the controversy didn't. He did not speak as though the room was unaware of the conflict. He addressed it obliquely, carefully, but directly enough that no one could miss the reference. It is an appeal for restraint. He is telling the people in that room, and the people watching the broadcast, that outsiders do not have that judgment should be reserved for one who, and it is a theological statement. In the tradition Graham operates within, The idea that only God knows the full truth of the situation is not an evasion. It is a specific claim about the limits of human knowledge and the ultimate nature of accountability. For people following this story closely, for Jonathan and Susie, for the people who have read Julie Roy's reporting, for the families of children who have been in situations like the one alleged, that sentence lands differently. Only God knows the whole story is true in a theological. It is also, in a human sense, a way of closing a door. Here is what the memorial service actually contained if you hold all of it at once. Speakers honoring a pioneering woman in Christian broadcasting. Genuine tributes to real decades of real work. Community grieving a loss that was also an institutional moment. And underneath all of it, a son not on the program, a daughter-in-law who posted about trembling hands and nobody calling. Unresolved allegations involving a child. A family that could not find its way back to each other before the end. Franklin Graham stood at the podium and said, "Only God knows the whole story." And somewhere, not in that room, Jonathan and Susie Lamb were processing a grief that looked nothing like the grief being expressed from both griefs. Both were happening on both involved the same woman. Memorial service honored one version of Joni Lamb's story. The public version, the ministry version, the version her daughter spoke about with genuine love. The other version, the one Jonathan and Susie carry, has not yet been fully told. Susie said, "One day we will have words." That day did not come at the moment. Family conflict is not resolved with the memorial service. The allegations Jonathan and Susie made about their daughter, about how the situation was handled, do not disappear because Joni Lamb has been buried. If anything, the question of institutional accountability at Daystar, now navigating a leadership transition without its founding president, becomes more pressing, not less. Franklin Graham said, "Only God knows the whole story." There are human institutions, courts, journalists, regulatory bodies, whose job is to pursue the parts of the story that human beings can know. And those processes are not closed. Julie Royce has indicated continued coverage of the Daystar story. Jonathan and Susie have indicated they will eventually more fully. The memorial service was not an ending, it was a pause. Memorial services are, by their nature, acts of selection. They choose what to honor, what to emphasize, what to leave in the background for another day, another conversation, another venue. Joni Lamb's memorial chose, as most memorials do, to lead with legacy and love, with the version of a person that the people closest to her wanted the world to remember. That is not dishonest, that is human. That is what memorials are for. But the full story of a person and of the institution they built is not contained in a memorial service. It is contained in the people who weren't in the room, in the allegations that are still unresolved. In the child at the center of a family conflict that became a public controversy. In the daughter-in-law who wrote about trembling hands and the love that was always real. Franklin Graham said, "Only God knows the story." He's right in this. Some parts of that story are still being written by people who are still here, who said they will eventually have words. When those words come, they will matter. Until then, the service is over. The broadcast has aired. The tributes have been given, and the questions remain exactly where they were before the music started. Let me know what you think.